Well, good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for the introduction, Jeff. This is such a challenging environment today when we talk about how to succeed in e-commerce. So in talking to Laura, she was very interested in my insights and how a company can find a competitive advantage in the area of shipping and in the area of e-commerce. Before we get into that, a little bit of detail on my background. As Jeff mentioned, I'm currently a senior advisor to Grand Canals. Grand Canals provides a fulfillment intelligence cloud for businesses to optimize their shipping and their fulfillment chain. I'm also the co-founder and partner at Ursa Major Associates, which is a consulting firm that specializes in business process and strategy for postal, parcel, and logistics companies. Prior to that, as mentioned by Jeff, I was with Borderlinks. Borderlinks is a cross-border landed cost platform for online sellers and also for international consumers. I've been VP of Operations for Interscola. We sold surplus assets for government organizations on the internet. I also was VP of Operations for Testmart. Testmart was one of the first online marketplaces back in the early 2000s, and we sold test and measurement equipment, again, on the internet. By far and away, my broadest experience was with DHL, where I started in the early days and moved up through a variety of positions, culminating with the Senior Vice President of e-commerce. So the reason I mention this is with nearly 40 years in the industry, I understand what goes on in shipping parcels. I understand the vagaries and the difficulties in delivering a consistent, reliable service to customers. And based on that, I feel that we can really learn from some of these things and apply it to our businesses today. I found this graphic to be quite interesting. There's no question everybody's aware that e-commerce is growing and growing at an accelerated rate. One of the stats that jumps out at me here is that based on some research by MIT in conjunction with Internet Retailer, it is estimated that in 2016 there were 50 million e-commerce websites in the world. And Laura threw up a number of $2 trillion in e-commerce revenue. This graph actually shows a little less, a 1.2 trillion, but the number is actually irrelevant. What's important is how quickly the industry is actually growing. And you can see here that there's a number of traditional companies on this graphic, when they started becoming involved in e-commerce. Amazon very early on, and then we have customers, a customer of Shippo, Holler, which is a relatively new entrant, but very fast growing. There's no question that Amazon is really the catalyst for change in the e-commerce world. If we looked at the traditional retailers and compare that to Amazon in terms of market value over the last decade, this is really a sobering view. You can see that our traditional brick and mortar retailers have really undergone a terrific erosion in their market value, while during the same time, we see Amazon's market value increasing nearly 2,000%. So this is very sobering, but really what underlies this is what's going on with Amazon in terms of how they're going about the market, how they're building scale, how they're building momentum. Last year, Amazon increased its sales in the beauty and cosmetics category by 47%. The market in the United States increased by 2%. In the area of housewares, they increased their sales by 38%, and the market at large increased only 6%. So there's no question these guys are in the market share game. And what scares everybody is when Amazon moves into their category. And was talking to one of the attendees here, John, a moment ago, and he's in the apparel business. And so we need to beware, because this year is the year of apparel for Amazon. They have already come out with some branded, private branded apparel, and they're looking at ways to innovate in apparel manufacturing and selling. So when they focus on things, they actually get things done. So this is a very interesting case study to see how well they do in a well-established and a bit more difficult category than housewares. There's no question that all of you that are shipping today are between the rock and the hard place. The customer demands are increasing. The costs that you have to bear are increasing. Customers are less willing to pay for the services that they're demanding you deliver. And clearly, Amazon keeps raising the bar. And the thing about Amazon is they're more than an e-commerce retailer. They have other revenue streams that are helping them subsidize their growth and their penetration into e-commerce. It was just announced yesterday, I believe, that their total revenue went up 27% last fiscal year. And if we look back at Amazon's growth in the prior 3 years, they went up 22%, which means last year they actually are increasing their revenue growth. Again, scary, but much of that comes from AWS as well as their growth in the e-commerce space. So the question in front of all of us is, how can I profitably meet the customer expectations in a rapidly transforming e-commerce driven world? And we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about understanding the challenges. We're going to talk about how we come up with creative solutions. And lastly, we're going to talk about how we can sustain our ability to compete as we go forward. The consumer-driven supply chain is what underpins e-commerce. Fulfillment is no longer just an afterthought. It is material to the consumer experience. 61% of all online shoppers look at reviews before they buy. And that includes reviews not only of product, but reviews of e-commerce retailers. Beyond that, typically, on average, a consumer will look at 3 different websites before they purchase. So it becomes very important as the consumer is shopping online that your website stands out and gives them something remarkable to attach to so that they buy from you. And one of the things that jumps out in the surveys is 51% of customers will abandon their shopping cart if they perceive the shipping to be too slow. Now, that shipping speed has really been set by Amazon. They've raised the bar to 2-day shipping for free. And if you look at some information about Amazon customers, 80% of Amazon customers have signed up for Prime because of the 2-day shipping. Yes, there are other benefits to Prime. You know, video streaming, books, all kinds of things. But it's the shipping that really is the impetus for customers to sign up for Prime. How many people in this room are Prime customers? Very interesting. There was a little sidebar here. I was just reading something. There was some information put out earlier this week that said that there are now 80 million Prime customers. And there was some calculations that were done based on households and numbers of people in households, et cetera, and this particular article said that 63.9% of all households in America are Prime members. Now, I actually don't believe that. I think the calculations are a little flawed, but nonetheless, just judging by the raise of hands in here, Prime is a big deal, right? Well, customer expectations are certainly rising. Apologize that some of this printing is a little bit small, but this represents the answers to two questions that Deloitte has in their annual holiday survey. And the first question in the upper left is, what do you perceive as fast shipping? Well, the taller bars of the graph are same day, next day, second day. But importantly, 3 to 4 day shipping, only 42% of respondents said that they felt that was fast. And that's a 21% decrease from just a year prior. When we look at the other question that Deloitte asks in the survey is, what are you willing to pay for shipping? You can see that through each transit time that's expressed up there, same day, second day, and so on, people are willing to spend only less and less. But really interestingly here is, if you look at the line, the red line there, for 3 to 4 day shipping, the survey respondents said 88% of them said they would not pay anything for 3 to 4 day shipping. And even same-day shipping, 32% of people said they would not pay for same-day shipping. So this really ratchets up the demands and the expectations of the customer. And so while the customer isn't willing to pay for shipping, none of you that fulfill orders actually get shipping for free. You're paying for it and subsidizing it, obviously, through your revenue streams. So I want to point out some areas where we can find the advantage in shipping, find the advantage in e-commerce. So one of the things that we have focused on a lot of the logistics providers, logistics operations managers and so on, focus on is, how do I get good transit times, great rates, so on and so forth from my carriers? Carrier negotiation, so on and so forth. Very important, but it's missing the point here. This is how we get competitive advantage based on our fulfillment. What you have here is a screenshot from a website of Saludos. Saludos is a shoe brand, and this is from their own company website. So we looked at this particular sandal. It's $129. We see the sizes, we see the colors, but the question comes up, when would I get my order if I bought these shoes? And then the next question is, what are they going to charge me for shipping? These are all very important questions today in terms of your total experience with the retailer. So Saludos sells their shoes on Zappos, on Amazon, and a variety of other websites. I mentioned that consumers tend to look at 3 different websites on average before they purchase. And given the show of hands in here, who could suggest perhaps another website someone might check to buy these shoes? Amazon. Yes, sir. So let's take a look at the identical product shown on Amazon. So first of all, we see the same product, same ability to order size and so on, same price. But right opposite the price, free shipping. And not only does it say free shipping, it tells you exactly the date and day that you will receive your purchase if you purchase within a 3-hour time frame. So if you're out there shopping for a pair of sandals, how many of you would purchase from Saludos? How many would purchase from Amazon? Now, I know a lot of you won't purchase because you don't want the sandals, but that's not beyond the point. Just to try to understand behavior, one of the things that happens, I know I do all the time, if I see a website where the shipping cost isn't clear or available, or the delivery time isn't specified on the product page, I'll throw something in the cart and go, look, okay, let me see what this is, because, might be a good deal after all. So I did that on the Saludos website, and here again, in the cart, it does say it's free shipping, but the free shipping is 3 to 8 days. I still don't know when I'm going to get the sandals, right? So even so that they include the shipping in the cart, and it's clear on your options, it's still nowhere near the customer experience that you get with Amazon. And when you put the Amazon purchase in the cart, you get even more options in terms of the delivery, very specific. Now, there is a date range on the standard shipping, and obviously this is a product of the method or the carrier that they're using to ship. But still, if I'm getting free 2-day shipping, why would I even bother with the standard shipping? Okay, let's take one more look at a potential purchase. So in this case, what I did is we looked at buying a pair of Ray-Ban Wayfarer sunglasses. And Sunglass Hut is a great retailer. They have a great website. As a matter of fact, they're one of the finalists in Multi-Channel Merchants competition for customer experience for this year. They've really focused on getting their operations so they can get 2-day shipping to all their customers. So when I look at this, I said, okay, this is pretty good. I see 2-day shipping. I see that it's free. I see a specific date. Man, this is looking pretty good. But then I look at the date. The date is Thursday, March 16th, 2-day shipping. But today, the day I'm ordering it, is Sunday the 12th. And I'm thinking, who did this math? How is purchase on the 12th and deliver on the 16th 2 days? It's not. They may be using 2-day shipping, but I suspect they have an order to ship problem here, right? So again, it's the fulfillment experience. You can have a great operation with your carrier, but if you can't get your product out the door in a timely fashion, then you're going to have an issue. So once again, I'm shopping around, and I go from Sunglass Hut to Amazon, and lo and behold, Wayfarer sunglasses, same price. Oh, free shipping. And not only is 2-day free shipping there, I can get it 1-day free shipping. So maybe I don't need the sunglasses till next weekend. But which one are you going to order from? Amazon or Sunglass Hut? So my point here is having a look at the total customer experience based on fulfillment can actually drive your top line revenue. And it can drive it very nicely if you can position the capabilities appropriately when the customer comes to your product page. So the strategy for fulfillment analytics really starts with understanding the basics of your end-to-end fulfillment chain. You have to have inventory intelligence. You have to know where your inventory is. You have to have location intelligence. You have to know where your customers are. And you have to have good delivery intelligence. You have to know what kinds of service levels you get from the carriers that you're using, and the service levels that you've contracted to use through these carriers. And when you can combine all this information together, you then can create a user experience that does much of what Amazon does. Amazon throws you the little bone, order this in 3 hours and you can get it next day. They're very specific in terms of the delivery time and date, or excuse me, the delivery day and time. And they're very specific about the cost right up front. Nothing is hidden. It used to be you could hide some of this stuff, and if you could get somebody into your shopping cart, they'd say, okay, yeah, I'm going to buy that. No more. If you don't have it up front, they're not going to buy. So the challenge is to put all this information together. So the journey to analytics-driven fulfillment really has 3 primary steps. It starts with the data. You've got to get lean in terms of your fulfillment operation. And by lean, I mean not only low cost, but highly efficient, highly repeatable, and very predictable in terms of its operation. And things change so fast, you have to stay lean with your fulfillment operation. So let's start with the data. Well, everybody's heard this before. You can't manage what you don't measure. So you need to understand the cost and the performance across your entire fulfillment chain. How long does it take you to move from the order to shipping your product? How long does it take from ship to delivery? How reliable are those metrics? You have to understand everything about your carrier. You have to understand your contract, your discounts. You have to understand your dimensional factors, your surcharges, on and on. There's lots of detail there. And if you're using multiple carriers, you've got to be able to normalize that data across those carriers so you have a good picture about what's going on with your delivery. The same thing applies to your inventory placement, what SKUs are where, understanding where your customers are so that you can understand what inventory to pull from and what carrier and what service level to use to deliver to the customer per your commitment. And then you've got to optimize that fulfillment chain. This has got to be driven by the user experience. You have to understand what is expected. Look at your competition. What are they delivering in terms of customer experience? How can you get as close as possible to that same or exceed that service level? Look at your service mix. Many customers that we've dealt with and I've seen tend to go to UPS or go to FedEx and say, here's all my business, right? I want, give me a 2-day air price and give me a ground price. Well, the fact of the matter is that's insufficient to optimize your operation. You need to be looking at not only those big carriers, but you need to look at their hybrid products like SurePost and SmartPost that are lower cost. It depends on the nature of your product and what your customers' expectations are, but those can be very viable alternatives. Look directly at US Postal Service. For any of you that have shipments that are routinely under £1, first class package is a terrific service. No, it doesn't have all the checkpoints that some of the FedEx or UPS Air has, but it's pretty darn reliable, and I'll tell you what, it's very, very affordable. Look at regionals. Depending in California, we have Golden State Overnight, we have On Track. Other parts of the country, we have LaserShip, we have Lone Star Overnight. Where are your fulfillment centers? Can you use some of these guys? Because their rates and their service level is actually better than UPS Ground or FedEx Ground in many, many areas. So you need to be aware of these things. You need to be able to pull in this data, look at it, compare it, And this is how you figure out your service mix. Looking at your carrier contracts, make sure you have good contracts. You've got to make sure that your carriers are actually billing you based on what contract you have. We've noticed at Grand Canals that we had helped customers get a fantastic contract only to see the carrier come in and bill them something different than that was in their contract. And when you're doing thousands and thousands of shipments, to catch these things is not easy. But these are the kinds of things that you have to understand and make sure you have visibility on the data. And lastly, and very, very importantly, there's so much that needs to be done to optimize your fulfillment chain. You can't do it on your own. Very few companies can even do most of it on their own. Amazon doesn't do it on their own. You need to look at partnerships. Partnerships, do you have the data? Can you get the data? If not, partnership. Do you have inventory locations close to your customers? If not, can you afford to put your own in? No, partnerships. Carriers, obviously you're not delivering your own packages, partnerships, right? And on, partnerships are the way that in today's world that you're going to be able to compete. Now, importantly on partnerships, you've got to share the strategy. What are your objectives? How are you going about addressing the market and those key customers? Your partners have to understand that fully, thoroughly. And then you have to communicate with them. And it's a full-time job to liaise with your partners. If you're using a 3PL, you can't just hire a 3PL and say, oh, they're taking care of it. It won't work. You have to have daily communication. You have to have metrics. You have to review those metrics. Otherwise, you're not going to control them, and you're not going to see the quality that you're expecting from that third-party logistics provider. And then the next step, once you get your improved fulfillment chain in place, is you have to ensure compliance. If you have routing rules, if you have certain standards for which you need to adhere to get packages out the door, if you have certain standards for reliability with carriers, you've got to keep on top of this. It's changing all the time. It's changing daily. As weird as that sounds, things are changing daily in the e-commerce world. There's some big changes afoot. UPS has announced that they are going to have a regular Saturday delivery capability coming in. What does that mean to your fulfillment and your customers? Got to plan for that. Other things that are happening, not so much in delivery, but in overall e-commerce, Walmart has announced that they're going to start discounting products if you pick up at the store. And they're doing that, obviously, because it's a lot cheaper to get product to a store in bulk than it is to get to your doorstep. So, do you have an impact on your business based on something like that? And then there's some things that are a little bit outside what we think of as fulfillment today. There's a number of companies that are piloting delivery receptacles for residences, both multi-tenant as well as single-family homes, that provide for secure delivery, that provide a way for carriers to never have a redelivery, and provide for customers never have to chase down their package, right? These things are going to be standard in a few years, because package theft today, there's about, I think the number I saw recently, 11 million cases of packages being stolen off porches, right? That's a problem. That's a problem for your customer. And if your customer doesn't get your shipment, they're not going to be happy. So thinking about how you might interface with these kinds of solutions are quite important. So finding the competitive advantage. is really about addressing the challenges that you face every day by understanding in detail everything about your operation. And understanding everything you can about the consumer behavior and the evolving consumer behavior, looking at the competition. So data, data, data. Understanding what's going on is the foundation of finding the competitive advantage. And then those areas of limitation where you are not able to, within your own organization, solve the problem, meet the challenge, you need to look to partnerships. And again, you've got to share your strategy and objectives with partners. True partners want to know that to do the best possible job. And then lastly, you have to make sure that those solutions and initiatives are aligned with your overall strategy. You know, it's very difficult to compete with Amazon on a national basis. They don't do exactly the same level of service in every city in the country, but by golly, they have a lot of fulfillment centers and a lot of primary, secondary, and even tertiary cities. So competing with them throughout the country is an onerous task and probably not possible for most of you. However, if you look at your key demand markets and think about whether or not you can ratchet up your service, ratchet up your capabilities in those markets, and then align your strategic partners to focus on those markets and be good enough to the rest of the country, I think that you'll find that you're developing a competitive advantage and can continue to grow your business. So hopefully I've given you a little insight on how we think that e-commerce companies can improve and compete with Amazon. Certainly there are tons of ideas out there. And as we go forward, I hopefully you'll pick up some tips, as Lauren indicated earlier, from our presenters today. And there's lots of partners in this room that you can work with. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time. And I think we have time for a few questions, right? Anybody questions? Move out here so I can see. No questions. Either I baffled you, you fell asleep, or you're overwhelmed and you've given up. Okay, well, I'll certainly be around most of the day today, and feel free to come and chat, and hopefully I can give you some insight and understand how I can help you. Oh, I can't see. We do have a question. Well, there's one company, actually it's a Shippo customer called Holler, that on the fulfillment optimization side has reduced their costs for fulfillment by about 30%. So think about your transportation, your parcel bills, reducing those by 30%. How important might that be to the profitability of your business? And they did that by really looking at the carrier and service mix and moved a whole bunch of their traffic to FedEx SurePost. A lot of their, I don't know if many of you know Holler in here, but they're basically have tons of different products. Many of them are lightweight. And they really benefited from a postal-based solution. So that's one example. They haven't really driven the top line as quickly. And that's something that they're working on as well. Of course, those guys are growing so bloody fast. I don't know that they could handle any more top-line growth. It's amazing how much they're growing. As I think the Shippo guys might know that. Okay, anybody else? I can't, I'm in the spotlight here. Okay, well, thank you. Oh, yep.
About data in the warehouse and fulfillment processes, do you manage or your company manage areas around receiving through shipping, getting an understanding of the true data as a fulfillment cost? Or do you have any customers that come to you for that type of expertise?
Yes. So what we're doing right now at Grand Canals is we pull in all the data from your carriers relative to all package level detail, basically, including delivery. And we can, dice and slice that, or you can, as our customer, using our platform, dice and slice that any way you want it to understand exactly what's going on with your shipping. And you can look at things. One of the things that, just an example, that's very, very common, not so much for e-commerce companies, but for other commercial shippers, is that we see a lot of times shipments that go out in an overnight or 2-day air service to points that are served overnight or 2 days by ground. And people say, well, just get this there in 2 days. So they go 2-day air. They go, that's how they ship it. Well, we'll get there by ground. And there's a huge amount of money left on the table by customers who do that. So at the early stages, that's one of the first things you do. You go in and look for the obvious low-hanging fruit. But when you have all that data, then you can understand that whether or not you're consistently getting a transit time for service level, also filing for lates if you have a guaranteed service. It's estimated that there's $5 billion a year left on the table with FedEx and UPS because customers did not file a late delivery claim. There's companies out there, lateshipment.com and many others, that do that for you, and they take a percentage of the recovery. So there's all these various things that having the data allows you to do. Does that answer your question? Okay, thanks. Any others?
You mentioned in your case study, you used to be able to hide fees, and there's really no value anymore to doing any hidden fees around extra things. I'm totally aligned with that. Like as a consumer, it's not a great experience to find hidden fees. But I was wondering, are there appropriate applications that you do see where that might make sense? Where I'm coming from is there's a lot of companies that are doing order $50 or more. So you check out with the item price and then find out only during how much is in your cart what shipping might cost.
Yeah, I think that I've seen that as well. And the problem that I think companies who do that have, if you don't show it up front, right? Or at least at a high level on your, as you put things in your shopping cart and advertise that you have a $50 minimum or whatever the case might be, you're encouraging cart abandonment. I mean, this is really a consumer behavior thing. And I think you're right. I think there are options that you can put later in the transaction, depending on the product, right? We see on Amazon now, if you buy, I don't know, they're selling knockdown furniture. So you buy something on Amazon, and right there, you have an option on the product page to purchase the service to assemble it, right? Now, I could see that kind of thing could be put in the shopping cart, without hugely impacting abandonment rates. It's an add-on. And there could be similar things, not so much with small parcel type things, but with white glove delivery. There's delivery to the threshold, there's delivery inside, there's unboxing, there's setup. I mean, those are all things that you don't necessarily got to put in somebody's face on the product page. And they are appropriate to put later into the transaction, I think. Any more? Yes?
Do you have a perspective on flat fee shipping versus dynamic price shipping? I think Amazon was probably one of the pioneers in flat fee shipping over a certain amount. So what do you see, I guess, as the current trend?
Well, I think well, the current trend is free shipping, so there's no question there. But in terms of flat fee, I mean, whether or not that resonates in the particular market and category that you're selling, I think that, you know, it's completely reasonable if you can understand what your true costs are. So for example, eBay is many times, if it's not free shipping, there'll be a flat rate regardless of destination. And you know, it's kind of, it helps subsidize the seller's expense in shipping. But you know, I really think that we're going to see an evolution here in flat rate shipping, free shipping, and I think the catalyst here is actually going to be Walmart with their discounted price for basically no shipping, right? So it's an area to watch. I don't necessarily have any predictions which way it's going to go, but it's hugely driven by consumer behavior and consumer acceptance, and it also is heavily influenced by the category. You know, we're seeing you know, some of the more difficult or heavier things to ship. You know, they're even moving to free, but I can see that there will be a flat fee, possibly to offset the costs that the merchant is incurring to get things to the door. Okay. All right. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.